Hi people, and hi my Chili Con Carnage crew. I've decided to do something special today for this new episode here, and that is to forego my usual 5-minute reviews, and instead, I will do a review on one of my favourite bands. Despite what you may have thought with some of the reviews I've done with them in the past here, or reviewing them again, I'm going to have a look over the Offspring and my favourite albums. Now, fans of the channel may remember I am not too fond of their most recent album. In fact, it's probably the lowest scored album I did for last year. I even went back and did a rescore on that album. And in that album, let's just say, it wasn't exactly the best. And despite all this, I am actually a big fan of the Offspring. I have been for the better part of 20 years almost. And I have enjoyed their music throughout that time. So, I thought, in order to defend my honour as an Offspring fan, I should go over all their other music and discuss, in depth of course, what albums I thought were the worst, and which albums were the best. So, without further ado, let's start at the worst of the albums. And of course, leading that is Let the Bad Times Roll, the newest album that just came out, and that should probably come as no surprise to the fans. I didn't like this album in particular. The way it was produced was just horrendous. The songs themselves are just forgettable for most of the part. There are some pretty good songs with one or two tracks such as Hassan Chop or the Opioid Diaries. These songs aren't too bad, but the rest of this album is just horrendous, and I really can't stand it. I don't think I've gone through the album since my re-review on the special episode I did special episode I did for my 1-year anniversary of the channel, and I don't see myself really coming back to play any songs except for those Hassan Chop and the Opioid Diaries. So, unfortunately, it is taking up the worst spot. Let's get on to the next album, and unfortunately, this one is Days Go By. Not because I really hate the album, but because I really haven't listened to it. I just want to know, fans, let me know, should I listen to this album? Is it something I have missed and really have to go back on? I mean, I heard the lead single, Days Go By. I really liked that track, actually. It was quite a nostalgic feel to it. Great song by the band. I did like also the track Dirty Magic, their re-recorded version of that track, I should say. One of my favourite Offspring tracks, by the way, is Dirty Magic. So I did love the fact that they just re-recorded that one and did it for the album. Besides this, I really haven't listened to it, so unfortunately, I'm just going to put it up there as the next album along the list here. And that is where it's going to be. Again, let me know, am I missing out on this album? Is there some tracks maybe you should think I should go to and go, hey, listen to this track in particular, it might change your mind. I mean, hell, it might even change my opinion on the whole album and might go higher. From here on out, there are only bangers. I love all these albums, but unfortunately when you make a list, and of course it's going from worst to best, some albums are just going to be not as good as others. For me, the following album, Splinter, is just that. There were some good songs. I do remember it coming out at the time and listening to it with some friends who were big Offspring fans, and we had some great times listening to that, but they were just, the tracks in general, a bit forgettable over time. You know, Hit That was a decent radio hit at the time. I don't mind hearing it now. The Noose is alright. Spare Me the Details, I guess for the lols, I guess. You know, When You're in Prison, you forget about that one. The Hui was alright. And I remember reading up about Neocon, which was the intro track, and it was just this basic drum track, and thinking, okay, what was this about? They were writing this as the intro track for their tour, and they wanted this piece, of course, for every time that they would come on the stage. And looking back on it, I mean, they've done a lot better with their intros. It's probably one of the worst intros they've done for an album. So, yeah, unfortunately, you know, a few of the other tracks, worst hangover ever, forget about it. So, we will go on, move along here, and of course the next album I should say, is going to be The Offspring. Their very first album back in, I think it was 1989. It's a really good album. It shows the band with raw energy. It definitely shows a new light to what they would become. and it's raw, it's passionate, it's just this, shows what the band would eventually become, but at the same time it kept them rooted in like their 80s sound. When you go back to listen to other bands in particular around this time, like NoFX or Bad Religion, this was actually quite a different sounding album. It was not quite polished, but it wasn't abrasive like those other albums, or the other albums at the time. I was listening to Jennifer Lost the War just before I did the recording of this episode, and the track still holds up. These guys knew how to write a song. Of course, who could forget Blackball, one of the best tracks out there? Crossroads or Out on Patrol. It's a really good album, and if you haven't listened to it, really recommend checking out a few of those tracks. In particular, Blackball and 1,000 Days, a few other ones like that. It shows the Offspring in their very early stages, and how, really, where they would go to in the future. Shows them off in a different light compared to where they are now, definitely. So we have the following album, and for me, this might be controversial for others, but it's Ixnay on the Hombre. Now, hear me out, because this was like the last album I bought of the 90s era albums. So its last ability didn't have a massive impact on me, as per se, and I didn't really enjoy the tracks until much later in my life. The Meaning of Life, there was still a few good tracks. The Meaning of Life, of course, Gone Away, biggest song on the bloody album, and a few other ones like that weren't too bad. Cool to Hate, great songs, but again, it was, at the time, I bought the album, I listened to it probably once or twice, and went, that was alright. Went back to, a few of the other albums. So, I guess I didn't really give it time, and like I said, it was the last album I bought from the 90s, so unfortunately it remained a bit forgotten in time. Now we move on again. The next album I have, and this is a bit of a memory lane one here, Conspiracy of One. Yes, I'm rating it higher. And that's because, to me, Conspiracy of One, that was the first album I got, and I got it as a gift for a birthday, actually. And it was my introduction to The Offspring. Hadn't heard of the band before. I think Original Prankster was on the radio at the time. I might have heard of that track, actually. And I got this CD, and I remember looking at it like, what is this? This is a weird album cover. You got that flaming skull, the logo, of course, of The Offspring on the front. And, this mad little sign writing and stuff. And it just blew my mind. It changed my view on music, kind of got me into punk rock a fair bit. And it's this cheerful kind of, 90s, early 2000s era punk rock album. Kind of like the Vans of Walk Tour kind of soundtrack or something like that. A Million Miles Away, Want You Bad, Original Prankster I could probably do without. I've heard that a million times. Come Out Swinging, of course. One Fine Day, great track. There's just a lot of tracks there that are just incredible. But upon replaying, I guess, they've kind of lost that edge to them. And, Through Rose Tinted Glasses, sure, the album was great. But now it's lost a bit of consistency over the years, unfortunately. So we move on again. The following album I will list will be Ignition. And this is a great album. I remember buying this. I think it was one of the first albums I bought after I heard Conspiracy of One. And it was a game changer, really. Session, of course, you start off with that. We Are One, Kicking When He's Down, incredible tracks to launch an album. Playing it straight through, it from start to finish, it really doesn't have too many moments where it's a dull song. It has my favourite song, of course, from The Offspring with Dirty Magic, and other ones, once again, We Are One, Session, Kicking When He's Down, and Hypodermic, So, again, an incredible album, and it was, I think, their second album, and it showed what the band was aiming for with their newer sound. It was a little bit more polished compared to their original album, The Offspring, and you could see where they were going to move to in the future, especially in hindsight now. And it was just, it's a great listen from start to finish. We move on, of course, And we're going on to Rise and Fall, Rage and Grace. It's an incredible album. Any Offspring fan loves this album. And it just shows that the band is still able to, write incredible tracks. Many people would have probably written them off in their later ages and stuff like that, but this shocked a lot of people. You have a lot of tracks here, Hammerhead, You're Gonna Go Farkhead, Trust in You, Half Truism, Stuff Is Messed Up, Fix You, Let's Hear It From Rock Bottom. It's just an incredible album. From start to finish, this was highly enjoyable. And I remember playing this a lot of the times in my car, going for drives or whatever. And it was just this great album to hear. I could do without Christy, Are You Doing Okay? I understand the reasons for that song, but for me, it was a song that I just never really liked. I got the message that they were doing, though. But still, very solid album. So we are heading into the last two albums. Which ones will it be? Number 2 and number 1. Well, I'll probably surprise a lot of people here, and I'll say Americana takes the second slot. This album is just incredible from start to finish. It does have incredible tracks that just go seamlessly. They flow seamlessly in its editing. Starting from Welcome, one of the best introductions to any Offspring album I think I've ever heard, to Have You Ever, to the way it seamlessly transitions into Staring at the Sun, and it just keeps going on, and all these tracks are they're just insanely great tracks. I think the thing that let it down compared to the album coming up really is Pretty Fly for a White Guy. That track has been flogged to death, and unfortunately, I just never want to hear that song again. The kids aren't all right. She's got issues. Yeah, that's all right. The end of the line, no breaks. Why don't you get a job? Yeah, Americana. Great drumming on Americana as well. That sound, dun 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 dun. It's got that beat that and then the big guitars just kick in, and it's a great hook, especially for what's coming. The payoff on that track is just incredible. And of course it leads into the last track there, Pay the Man, with its little, one of the longest tracks that they ever did, really, and it just transitioned on to something that I never really thought I would hear from the Offspring. So, yeah, look, this album's hard to fault, but like I said, Pretty Fly for a White Guy, just because it's probably been overplayed to death. Other than that, the album has a sleek production, an incredible incredible track list, and overall is just one insanely amazing album. If you've never heard of the Offspring, you've probably got to start with this album or the following one that I'm about to mention. And of course, the number 1 slot for me is Smash. This album takes the number 1 pick. It's my favourite Offspring album. It's great from start to finish, and to me, there's just no weak tracks. And people might be saying, what about, for example, Come Out and Play? I could listen to that track over and over again. I just got to keep them separated, I could continue listening to those tracks over Pretty Fly for a White Guy, because even though it's been played a lot, it just still feels fresh. It doesn't feel like it's a forced MTV song. It still has a bit of raw energy in it. And also, it's that album that transitioned the band between that raw emotion from their early sound, the early 90s punk sound, to that kind of polished pop punk sound that they would become with Americana and onwards. It's that fine line that they walked. They were still enjoying some raw punk songs here, Killboy Powerhead, what was the other one? Nitro Youth Energy. All these songs here, there's still some short tracks and really raw, fast, aggressive songs. And overall, the album just sounds incredible. It really makes up that 90s punk rock kind of oi punk rock sound, and the Offspring pulled it off incredibly well. There's a few songs there that kind of comment on political issues. Actually, a lot of songs on a lot of their albums do, but they don't go overboard. And to me, I think that's one of the things that the Offspring, that brought me into the Offspring a lot, is a lot of punk tracks were about political issues and discussing them in depth, well, somewhat in depth, as fast as they could in 2 minutes or so. But the Offspring might mention something and kind of more have fun with things, more than discuss and engage political things. So, yeah, overall, Smash is the number one album for me from the Offspring. I would love to know from you guys, what is your favourite Offspring album? Comment below or comment on my Twitter at @LiveListenErased. Also, everyone, thank you for tuning in to this bonus episode. We hope to do more video episodes like this in the future. So smash like below, comment, love, share this stuff, do all the social shit, you know what. And enjoy yourselves, and stay spicy.